Hello and welcome everyone to our panel discussion today, which will celebrate World Patient Safety Day. And just to tell you, at Bayer, we've supported World Patient Safety Day since its initiation in 2019. And as a company, we always put patient safety and well-being first. In fact, it's at the core of all we do. And this year again, we're using the World Patient Safety Day to raise awareness. In fact, this morning I was virtually in Beijing, China, with 1,000 colleagues and participants talking about patient safety in the context of what we're doing in China. So really, there's a number of super interesting events we do today, and this panel discussion is very much an important part of that. So welcome to my fellow members of the panel and to all of you watching us online. And now I'll hand over to Jen from Savvy, who will be moderating today's session for us. Jen.
Thank you so much. And yes, we are here to celebrate World Patient Safety Day, which takes place tomorrow, September 17th. Today, our discussion is going to focus on the topic of protecting your heart and kidneys as you get older, and what we can learn from people who have lived with kidney disease and heart failure, so that we can all prioritize healthy aging. Our panelists today will share some lessons that they've learned and some tips for how to live healthily with chronic conditions such as heart failure and chronic kidney disease. I'm excited to be joined by several fabulous individuals here, including patients as well as folks from the industry. So first, I want to introduce Rick, who's a patient with chronic kidney disease. Also, we have with us today is Nefertari, who's a patient living with heart failure. We also are joined by Alexander Biedermann, who's the head of Global Pharmacovigilance at Bayer. And you just heard from Mike Devoy, who's the Chief Medical Officer at Bayer. I'm Jen Horonjeff. I'm the founder and CEO of Savvy Cooperative. And today we're going to be talking about all the things that we've also heard from patients. And so to start, I want to share a little bit more of the work that we've done to understand some of the things we've heard from patients living with heart failure and kidney disease. I'm going to share some results of a survey that we did earlier this year, which we conducted with 50 heart failure patients and chronic kidney disease patients in order to better understand how their conditions have impacted their lives, but also what measures they have put in place to manage their disease. So today I'm going to share some of those key findings. Now I'm going to take you over to some slides here. First, I want to share that within the cohort of individuals that we had surveyed for this particular project, we had a spread across different types of demographics and disease duration for these chronic kidney disease and heart failure patients. Now let's talk a little bit more about the lifestyle changes, improvements, and also the impact that we found during the survey of these types of patients. So first, I want to show you that being diagnosed with a chronic condition can really understandably have an impact on somebody's life. Respondents in our survey indicated that their diagnosis had affects their relationships with partners and friends. As you can see, that was 63 and 69% respectively for those living with heart failure and chronic kidney disease. And then 40 and 26% of those living with chronic kidney disease as well. The survey also highlighted that for many, their condition impacted their mental health. And this was 75% for those living with heart failure and 63% for those living with chronic kidney disease. However, many respondents indicated that they strongly agreed or also agreed that the lifestyle changes can improve health. So this was a really fascinating finding, and we started to ask them more about what things they did to improve their health. So here we had 82% of respondents reported that adapting their diet to improve health and manage their chronic kidney disease is something that they put in place. Whereas for those that were living with chronic kidney disease, focused on improving the amount of exercise they did, and that was 68%. And 26% were using wearables or other health apps. 100% of respondents living with heart failure had made changes to their diet and exercise. And 42% were taking part in therapy or counseling, and 50% making use of wearables or other health apps. Now, notably in our survey, we also found that these types of lifestyle changes, many of them were doing after their diagnosis, not before, but really we're finding a lot of relief from doing so. And so that's really important to highlight here, that they were making these improvements for their health. Here you can see that 58% of CKD and DKD patients had participated and said that their experience improved in their condition after implementing these lifestyle changes. Whereas in heart failure patients, 69% of the participants had experienced improvements after implementing them. Here are just some key quotes that it's important to call out that we heard directly from the patients, that exercise and diet helped them a great deal. And they would strongly advise a complete change of lifestyle to anybody who was diagnosed with CKD. Another person had said that they give medication time to work before giving up on it. And after that, if a medication isn't working out, that they should advocate that another treatment may work better for them. And so these are coming directly from the patients, and we're grateful that patients are using their voice to share and help educate other patients here. So I'm going to conclude walking through our survey results. And now we're going to have a lively discussion with our panelists here as we talk a bit more about how we can live healthily with kidney disease and heart failure. And so with that, we're going to have our first discussion. And this is going to be about how to live a healthy life with kidney disease and heart failure. And we're going to just be openly discussing ideas and advice for managing these conditions. Some people will develop chronic conditions such as heart failure and kidney disease, and the prevalence of these conditions increases with age. For some, however, these illnesses can occur earlier in life as a result of either congenital or inherited conditions. As we heard from the survey results, there was a strong belief amongst the respondents that lifestyle changes can affect health, and that these lifestyle changes can become more important as you age. So first, we're going to start by learning about some of Bayer's healthy aging initiatives. So Michael, I'm going to turn to you first. Can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative?
Thanks, Jen, and fascinating to hear the survey results and the impact of these diseases have. So the decade of healthy aging is something the United Nations and WHO inaugurated for this decade from 2021 to 2030, really taking account of the immense demographic changes we see across the world and rapidly aging populations in every society. And I'm very proud and glad to say that Bayer's working with the World Health Organization on a new far-reaching collaboration with really putting together sustainable projects and programs to support the decade of healthy aging around the world. We're actually one of 5 companies working together with high-ranking representatives from the WHO, other governmental agencies, NGOs, academia, and the Silver Society. And really, our aim as a company is to support this decade of healthy aging and its various goals. It has 5 key goals, and they're really linked to the previous UN sustainable goals. And one, for example, is making sure people have integrated care, because as you get older, you often need different aspects to take care of you and make you thrive in your older years. And we are one of the world's leading life science companies. And so this mega trend we face as a world of aging plays a key role for us, because as people get older, as you said, we develop more age-related chronic diseases such as heart failure or chronic kidney disease. But we want to help people of all ages live as well and as healthily as possible and for as long as possible. So that's high level for us, why we're actively involved in the Healthy Aging Initiative.
I so appreciate hearing about that. So I want to dig a little deeper. At Bayer, this year's activities around Patient Safety Day reflect a focus on healthy aging with a specific emphasis on heart and kidney health. So how does the Healthy Aging Initiative apply to those areas?
So we know that there's some things we should do to improve and help our health and prevent things happening to us. And that even if we're fit and healthy, or we've developed heart failure or chronic kidney disease, but doing these is not always easy or straightforward, or there are just barriers in place. So really our goal is to help educate and inform each other and the wider society about how we can look after our health, ideally before it's too late, but on an ongoing basis, and try and move to where we can delay, prevent developing some of these chronic conditions. And that's why we've developed a lot of materials and activities for this Patient Safety Day in the context of healthy aging and prevention. So that's really our philosophy, is how can we help people step in and prevent, delay getting chronic diseases, because there are ways to do that.
And so in terms of the steps that people can take to live a healthier lifestyle after developing kidney disease or heart failure, what would you advise?
So there are some very practical steps you can take to implement a healthy lifestyle at any age, whether you're younger or older, to keep your heart and your kidneys healthy, because those are two vital organs that really a critical part of living a healthy, productive life. And interestingly, the majority of things which are good for your heart are also good for your kidneys in preventing developing chronic disease. And they are things which also stand us in good stead more generally in terms of staying healthy and aging well. Eating a healthy and balanced diet, being active, doing exercise and other activities, and very importantly, keeping regular checkups with your doctor. One health problem which is easily treatable but can cause immense damage both to your heart and kidneys is high blood pressure. We have lots of simple and effective treatments for blood pressure, but it's something you don't feel or notice until it's very high. So for most of the time, it can be too high, but you completely not notice that. So get your blood pressure checked. And again, blood sugar levels can rise, and it can again not be something you notice in everyday life. So that's an important thing doctors check, particularly as you get older. And blood pressure, glucose levels are things which are linked, and also linked in terms of developing and preventing getting heart failure and kidney disease. So that would be my simple advice.
Thank you, Mike. Simple it sounds, but we know as patients it can be challenging at times to implement,
Yeah.
But thank you. So Alex, I'm going to turn to you now. We know that people get older, their chances of having multiple conditions that require treatment actually can increase. So as the head of pharmacovigilance, what are some of the safety challenges involved with these patients?
Thank you very much, Jen. I think that's a very important question. So let me first introduce the term polypharmacy, which means taking multiple medicines for one or more conditions. This is a growing problem as the population ages, and the World Health Organization have made medication without harm, which includes management of polypharmacy, as a global patient safety challenge. As most medical research focuses only on single conditions, and by the way, patients with multiple conditions are often excluded from trials, patients taking more medicines for multiple conditions can face an increased risk of adverse effects or unwanted side effects. Compounding this problem is that as people age, changes in the body's physiology, particularly in the kidney and the liver, can increase the risk of adverse effects. So it shows globally up to 11% of unplanned hospital admissions are attributed to harm from medicines, and more than 70% of these are elderly patients on multiple medicines. However, there are significant opportunities to reduce the burden with timely intervention.
Thank you for that. So what are some of the challenges involved, and what can patients and physicians do to make sure that polypharmacy, as you explained, using multiple medications, can be managed effectively?
Another good one. Well, I think patients can be under the care of separate medical teams for different conditions. We have to bear that in mind, right? Which can be an issue if there is an insufficient communication and cooperation between the healthcare professionals. This can be particularly challenging for both physicians and patients in areas with very fragmented healthcare systems. And I think furthermore, not only does medical research focus on one single disease at a time, but so does most clinical guidelines. This can be a real challenge for physicians treating patients with multiple conditions needing simultaneous treatment and management, as they lack the advice on how to do this safely and effectively. I guess it's important for all adverse events to be reported to the corresponding pharmaceutical company and or the relevant health authority, so they can track these, be more aware of how these situations arise, and what effect polypharmacy can have on side effects and adverse events.
Thanks for that, Alex. And I asked Mike for some advice. So now for you, what tips do you have for people who are taking multiple medications while living with chronic conditions such as heart failure or kidney disease?
Yeah, so adding to Mike's advice, I think it's important to maintain regular contact with your doctor so that they can monitor your condition on an ongoing basis and give you the most accurate advice and the best tailored care. So go to your doctors and see them regularly. And when you are taking multiple medications, as we just discussed, it is also vital that you monitor any potential side effects and discuss those with your doctor. You can also report side effects directly to the pharmaceutical companies so they can learn and update safety information accordingly. And personally, on a very practical level, sometimes like a so something like a pill organizer, for example, can be very helpful in keeping track of which medications should be taken on which day or at what time. And some people also find it useful, for example, to set reminders on their phones or other devices to remind them of specific timings. And I think those advices might help to manage your disease and your lifestyle a little better.
Thank you so much for that. And now we're going to turn our attention over to Rick and Nefertari to learn more about their personal experiences living with kidney disease and heart failure. So Rick and Nefertari, thank you again for joining us. This is the part that I'm very excited about, to really share those lived experiences. So first, Rick, I'm going to start with you. Can you first give us a little bit of your background for how long that you've been living with kidney disease?
Yeah. I am a person with type 1 diabetes, and I've had T1 for 48 years. So I lapsed into CKD several years ago. However, it was mild to the point where my doctor just decided to watch it. In the last year, my condition has progressed to the point where I'm now seeing a nephrologist on a quarterly basis. I had to have a kidney removed because of atrophy about a year ago, and that really threw things into a less stable situation. And frankly, ever since that time, my numbers. Yes, we do live by numbers. My numbers have degraded, and so it's a matter of grave concern.
Thanks for that. And I'm sorry that you're dealing with all of the different parts that you just described. And I want to now get your opinion, reflecting back on some of the things that we've already talked about here. We heard from the survey results that living with kidney disease can have an impact on many different areas of your life. And so you shared just a little bit about what you're going through, but what areas of your life would you say have been the most affected?
Well, there are two, and they are in opposite directions. First of all, I have become more restricted in terms of what I do, where I go. I love to travel, and of course, as my diseases have progressed, my ability to travel has lessened. And boy, I hate those restrictions. But on the other side, my wife and I have been married 45 years, and we dug into this together. I had type 1 when we got married. We understood what the risk was. And all I can say is, thank goodness she has stuck with me and I have stuck with her. And if anything, our bond has grown more as these diseases have progressed.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm glad to hear that. I know it can be something so challenging, which we heard in those survey results, that relationships can be impacted, and glad that yours has helped you grow stronger together. Nefertari, I'm going to ask you similar questions here. Excited to hear your perspective on as somebody who's been living with heart failure. So can you first help us understand how long you've been living with heart failure?
Absolutely. Hi, Jen, and thank you for having me. And a lot of people say I seem a little joyful to be someone with living with such a chronic illness. And it's because I'm a survivor. I had a massive heart attack while 9 months pregnant.
Mm.
And because my ejection fraction or my heart pumping function was so low, I ended up going into heart failure 14 years ago.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry to hear it. And I think it's obvious then that there are some parts of your life that were affected, but can you help me understand more? Just like what I asked Rick, what would you say are the areas of your life that have been impacted now as somebody who's living with heart failure?
It was a gradual degrade. I went from being this active, fit, very involved mother to a more sedentary, fearful actually of leaving, being too far from my medical center. So travel was affected, and being too far from my children for fear that they would have to come to me, heaven forbid something were to go wrong. So it has affected several areas in my life.
Thank you for that. And as we've just heard, there's a lot of advice available about living healthily as we age. But Nefertari, what are some of the steps that you personally take in order to live a healthy life with heart failure?
I had to learn from the beginning to let go of the old Nefertari. And a lot of people may not understand that, but if you are faced with something so severe, like I did earlier in life, it was the first time someone called my name after my heart attack. I almost didn't respond because I did not know who that person was anymore. I had to understand that the things that I used to be able to do were gone. So it was a grieving period. But then I went through the 12 steps. I went through the steps of grieving, and I got to a point where I finally accepted that there is a new Nefertari now. And I love her, and I have to be nice and kind to her. And I have to understand that the things that I could have done to prevent this did not, they were not in my case. I did not have those choices because my coronary artery ruptured while pregnant. So I did not have to live with the guilt, and no one should. Once you're diagnosed, it's too late for that. So you should be kind to yourself, love yourself, and make sure you take steps to tell yourself every day that you are worthy, you deserve good care, and advocate for yourself.
Oh, I love that. And we love that the new Nefertari is here to be able to share that advice with everybody who's listening, because I know personally that's very, very valuable to live your best life and accept where we're at. And with this, I want to now turn to you, Rick, because there's some other things that we might be able to do and leverage as we're, trying to live our best life. So as somebody living with kidney disease, are there any tools that you use that help you live a healthy life? Examples like fitness trackers or other ways that you might be helping to manage living with kidney disease?
Yeah. Again, two things. The first thing is I use a food application on my telephone. I track everything, looking at the salt content, as well as carbohydrate. It helps me manage my blood sugar, which managing blood sugar improves my chance of good kidney function, and it helps me manage my salt intake, which is something that the nephrologist is really concerned about. And the second thing is I make a point of seeing a person that is in my health plan. Medicare allows me to see a registered pharmacist, and my hospital offers that service. And once a year, I sit down with them. They review all my medications. We talk about all the interactions, who's prescribed what and why, and they make recommendations both to me and to my doctors about interactions between the medications, and also places sometimes where they think the medication may not be strong enough. And it's been a real help in my life. I've used that now for 4 years, And I find it to be so comforting. And it's such a blessing to have that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And so I'm going to come back to you again, Rick, and ask you to think back and help us understand the main lessons that you've learned as someone living with kidney disease.
I think the main lesson I've learned is something I want to thank this audience for, and that is to trust science. You know, pharmaceutical companies and doctors produce outcomes for patients, and I am so appreciative of that. And I know that these companies and these people view these as products or as chemicals or as end result. But for me, it's life. And that's the message I want to carry forward, is how much I appreciate it. My mom my mom was on dialysis, and we lost her at age 48. We never once gave up our belief in medical science. And that's something my mom taught me, and it's something that I have held on to these 30 plus years afterward. And I just want to say thank you so much.
I appreciate you sharing the takeaway of thanks as we think about how we're looking at the future of healthcare and how helpful it's been. But if we could reflect back now, I'm curious if you have any advice that you would give to try to help, say, a younger relative or somebody else entering into their journey make positive steps to prevent them from developing kidney failure. Anything
Sure.
that you could share?
Sure. Control blood sugar. Kidney failure seems like such a long way away when you are diagnosed at 17 with type 1 diabetes. And the doctors, they tell you about it and you sort of think, yeah. But our modern technology gives us the ability to normalize blood sugar almost from the start. And my best advice is use that technology, normalize blood sugar. You can live a full and complete life. We have that ability now, even with a disease like diabetes.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that advice. And I'm going to ask similar questions over to you, Nefertari. First, starting with the sort of main lessons that you've learned living with heart failure. You've shared some of that with us, but anything else you want to add to help our audience understand?
I learned, and I want to thank Rick for that information, because I agree, to trust science and to take time to learn about your condition. If your a family member or more than one family member may have a condition, if you see a pattern happening, take time to learn about that. I was happy to see that when I took my 14-year-old for a checkup, they checked her sugar levels. That was something that didn't happen when I was a young girl. It didn't even happen, I don't believe, a few years back. So again, sugar levels were important in my situation as well, because I don't know how much they may have affected my condition.
Yeah, thank you for that. And now I want to transition our conversation just a little bit more over to thinking about mental health and well-being as well. Nefertari, you had already mentioned some of the things of how you sort of changed your outlook, but I also want to ask you, how do you just prioritize your mental health and well-being while living with heart failure?
I had to realize that it has to be not number one priority. Like they always say, and we've heard it before, if you're on an airplane, you put the mask on yourself first. So if I don't take good care of my mental health and myself first, I can't be a good mother to my children. I can't be there for my friends and family because I'm not well enough. So I make sure I daily prioritize that. If I'm not able to do something, I'm able to say no. That's huge for me. in my life, the old Nefertari was never able to say no. Anyone asked me, I had to do it. I had to be there for everyone all the time, and especially my children. I had to make sure they got everything and anything they wanted and needed. And I know now that you can be a good mother. You can be just the way you are. You can say no sometimes, but explain to them why you have to say no. And they become children with empathy, and they understand that sometimes some people can't do certain things because of their health. And now my children have won awards in their classrooms for having empathy towards other children who have conditions and diagnoses. And I'm proud of that, because they have the compassion to make other children see, you treat these people with love and kindness because they deserve it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. You should be very proud, as I'm sure you are, to be able to develop children that have that level of empathy for others. And I think we can all learn from that. And also your advice to learn how to say no and to prioritize your health. So I appreciate you sharing that. And now, Rick, I want to turn it over to you to understand, how are you prioritizing mental health and well-being living with kidney disease?
Well, as you might imagine, with a chronic condition, I became depressed and had to seek mental health treatment 24 years ago. I have maintained that therapy the entire time, and I have continued to use medication to relieve depression. I'm a very different person than I was 25 years ago. And without those two supports and without the loving support of my wife, there's no way I could face another condition added on like CKD. It would just be too much. So I think that it's important to fortify yourself, take care of your mental health, particularly if you have a chronic disease, so that inevitably, when other things come along, it's not the end of the world. You don't see it as something that will destroy you. You see it as something else that has come along in the journey. And make no mistake, I'm not happy. I'm not thrilled that I have CKD, but by the same token, I didn't throw up my hands and say, oh no, that's the end of it. What I really said was, this is one more thing. And really the mental health therapy and the depression medication has allowed me to do that.
I'm glad to hear that. And I think it's important to have transparent conversations about this. So I appreciate you sharing that, Rick. And I'm glad that you're taking the steps that you need to manage your health. And now I want to bring our industry colleagues back into the conversation here. So, Mike, from your perspective, what would practical steps be to take to help protect and improve well-being for those living with these kinds of chronic conditions?
And before I say anything more, I just want to express my personal thanks for Nefertari and Rick in terms of really what they shared with us, because I think that is by far the most valuable, to hear how people are living with chronic disease, managing it, taking care of themselves, and also addressing the topic. So I really, really appreciate and thank them for sharing that with all the audience today. I also personally took away some very important learnings as well. I think in terms of your question, Jen, again, many of the things come back to what we were talking about earlier. A lot about feeling well, looking after our general being and mental health is taking care of ourselves. So, and they're very, again, things we hopefully can do. Going outside during the day, getting some fresh air, seeing the outside world, that can really help. Getting enough sleep, that's hard for me, I know, but again, something that we also know helps with our mental and physical well-being. Some people find that they meditate and that can help just recenter themselves, reduce their stress levels. And again, Rick and Nefertari referred to this, stay connected. So try to keep your family and friends and your relationships. And also people going through similar experiences can be very helpful. So patient support groups and other sources in chronic disease. So people who may be experiencing some of the things you're going through can give you emotional as well as practical support, which is very important. And we know there is infinite information available online these days, but what's important is to be able to know what is really helpful and based on science. As we heard, that is really critical because there's a lot of random, not so good stuff out there. So get guidance from your physician, from patient groups about what are trusted sources, because they will really give you useful and good advice. And as Alexander said, speak to your doctor, because they really know you first as the individual and your disease in the whole context, and can give you some real personalized guidance and support. So that would be my personal advice and guidance. Back to you, Jen.
Oh, thank you for walking through all of that great advice. And a sincere thank you to all of you for joining us to be able to talk through these things. But a special thanks to Rick and Nefertari, who are sharing their personal stories and experiences to help educate the rest of us about what it's like to live with chronic kidney disease or with heart failure. So I want to thank you again for sharing this with our audience. And now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Alex, and have you summarize some of the points that we've talked about as we close out this session.
Well, thank you, Jen. I'm very happy to summarize, of course. So I think we've heard today that while getting diagnosed with a chronic disease can have a big impact on your life, there's a lot you can do when it comes to managing your lifestyle that you can have positive impact on your physical and also on your mental health. We've discussed some of the changes that can be made in relation to diet, exercise, and managing medications that can all be very important. And as we all said, and I also want to send my sincere thank yous to Rick and Nefertari. We've heard from you both, who have kindly shared your own very personal and also very emotional experiences of living with a chronic condition. Some of the tips and advice they would give others in similar situations, whether it is using fitness apps to track your steps, a pill organizer, for example, to keep your medication on track, or getting out for walks regularly. The common theme is that there are things that you can do to enable you to live healthily with heart disease or kidney disease. I think the two patients brought very good examples. So let me end that session as well by saying we hope you have enjoyed that session here today. As you will see on the screen, we would ask you to please share your feedback on this panel discussion by scanning the QR code or following the URL to a brief survey. We value your feedback and would really appreciate if you could take some time to let us know how you felt about today's session. Thank you to all the participants for their contributions and time participating today. We really appreciate you sharing your insights and your experiences living with heart failure and kidney disease, as well as to you, Shen, from Savvy, for moderating today's panel discussion. To our viewers, the recording of this panel discussion will be available on Bayer Pharma's YouTube page. If you enjoyed listening to our discussion, please do share the video with your family, your friends, and colleagues once it's available online. Again, so thank you very much. And let me close the session now by saying have a good rest of the day, and please stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.